or the kill. Verse 24 saying, Teacher, Moses said that if a man dies having no children, his brother shall marry his wife and raise up offspring for his brother. What's that called? There's a name for that.
Levirate marriage.
Levirate or marriage. Levirate marriage. Thank you. Do you know what the reason for that was?
Because the women had no rights.
Well, right. Women were you bought your wife, you sold your daughter. So women were property. They had no right.
So that there was a way to leave their
Inheritance.
Children. The children were the only thing that, it was like a social security system.
That's it.
Children needed to take care of the parents. You need children.
So it was the social security system that God established it. Interesting how this was set up. God established that. Now these guys, recognizing that they don't believe in a resurrection at all. Think about this. Now there were with us 7 brothers. The first died after he had married, and having no offspring, he left his wife to his brother. Likewise the second also, and the third, even to the 7th. Last of all, the woman died also. Therefore, now these are the guys who don't believe in a resurrection. Therefore, in the resurrection, whose wife of the 7th will she be? For they all have her. The guys who don't believe in resurrection are posing this question. This is an interesting answer because this text has been very much misused by Christians through the years. Verse 29. Jesus answered and said to them, You are mistaken. No, not knowing the Scriptures nor the power of God. So he's telling these guys who claim to know the Scriptures better than anybody else and follow the Scriptures better than anybody else, you don't know the Scriptures. Nor the power of God. He's really saying to them, you don't know the God of the Scriptures. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels of God in heaven. Yes, he mentions the angels, which they don't believe in, as well. He's confirming there is a resurrection. There are angels. This text is often used to prove that there will, when you get to heaven, you won't have any partner. You're going to be a loner in heaven. That's not really what he's saying here. Be careful. And I can't tell you what all is implied, how we're going to be there in heaven, what kind of relationship we're going to have. I don't want to get caught in that, but don't misuse this text as well. He's saying, but concerning the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what was spoken to you by God, saying, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob? God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. Nowhere in the Old Testament, in the Bible that you and I have, nowhere in the Old Testament does it say anything about marriage in heaven. But what Jesus was talking about was they didn't understand death and resurrection, and there is a lot told about that. There's a lot told in the Old Testament, what we have today is the Old Testament, about death, the sleep, the resurrection, Jesus coming, what's going to be. That's what Jesus is talking about here. And don't use this text inappropriately to try and prove some other point. The people were really astonished at hearing this. What's he talking about when he says that there in verse 32, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. Those people were dead. Their tombs were there. They knew where most of these people were buried. They knew they were dead. What did he mean when he said that?
They're going to be resurrected.
They're going to be resurrected. God knows history. He knows the present. He knows the future. And these three people named, God knows they're going to be resurrected, and so he considers them as though they were alive then. Because he knows they will be. Isn't that interesting?
Actually, Moses already was resurrected by that time.
But Moses isn't what's listed here. He listed Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. These are the three that he listed. And he's saying, God sees them as though they were alive because I know what the future is. That's an important point for us to catch. Well, the Pharisees have one more try. They're going to try one more time. They send a scribe. A scribe and a lawyer are essentially the same thing. Today we think of a scribe as a secretary. But at that time, a scribe was the lawyer. They send this young lawyer and ask him to ask a question. But when, verse 34, but when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together. Then one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question, testing him and saying, Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? They spent hours on this subject. They discussed back and forth in every direction you can imagine the law. And I'm talking about now the Ten Commandment law, the Decalogue. Ask you, which one of these commandments is the most important? Well, they had them already divided. You got the four that pertain to love to God, and the last six pertain to love to man. Well, obviously, the first four is more important than the last six. In fact, they didn't put much importance at all on the last six. The importance was all on God, and the love to God. And then they would debate which one of these is most important. Back and forth, debate. You used to sit in the gates of the city and carry on and on and on about this. Jesus said to him, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Wow. He put them together exactly equal. They are on a plane. Love to God, love to man. If you don't love God, you're not going to love man, your fellow men, your fellow human beings, as you should be. If you don't love your fellow human beings, you're not loving God. They go together. They are one. And every one of these Ten Commandments are one as important as another. Turn over to Mark. Keep your finger here. Go over to Mark chapter 12. Mark 12, verse 32. Mark adds a little bit more to this story than what Matthew put in, and it's worth taking a look at. Verse 32. So the scribe said to him, "Well said, teacher, you have spoken the truth, for here there is one God, and there is no other but He. And to love Him with all the heart, with all the understanding, with all the soul, and with all the strength, and to love one's neighbor as oneself is more than all the whole burnt offerings and sacrifices." This guy was honest in heart, and he recognized that Jesus was right on the mark. He gave the right answer, and he recognized it, and he saw that this was more important than all the burnt offerings that had been going